Hello and welcome to the last talk in the Open Source Data Stack Conference. Our data is on its final leg through the modern data stack, and now we're going to talk about putting it to use in our operational tools. As with the other talks, feel free to join us in Discord, and we can continue the conversation there. I'm Brian Leonard. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Grouparoo, coincidentally, an open source tool that helps you operationalize your data. Before that, I was technical co-founder at TaskRabbit, a way to get chores done in your house. While there, I became super passionate about solving this gap between our data team and the teams that were working with customers, running the business out there and getting them the data they needed to be successful. Super happy to talk about how we can help everyone with that here today. Let's review of where we've been through the journey so far in the conference. So we've loaded data into our data warehouse with tools like Snowplow and Meltano. We've transformed it according to our business rules with tools like dbt. We've presented that tools to our users, that data to our users with tools like Superset. They can see reports and graphs and gain insights and all the stuff we've learned. And you'd think they'd be happy. They'd see all their high-value customers, for example, and now they know who they are and they can target them, right? Unfortunately, the more data you get, the more you want to do with it. The next stage that you'll inevitably start seeing after you get your act together with all these great tools that we've talked about so far is putting that data to use back in the tools where those teams live. Your support tool, your marketing tool, your sales tool, et cetera. That's what we're here to talk about today. If we remember Yukon's goals, they were about having a better experience for their high-value customers. Can we enroll them in an awards program so that they know we're glad to have them? Can we give them a better support experience? And can we, continue the conversation on social media? What that means from a data engineering perspective, really, is that we need to teach Marketo and Zendesk and Facebook some of the things that our data warehouse knows. And we need to do that to be most effective. We need to do that automatically and seamlessly for the business. This is called reverse ETL. When we talked about ETL before, ELT in Meltano's case, in general, it's about getting data into the warehouse. Reverse ETL is taking that data from the warehouse and putting it back into some of those places that we dumped it from before. So how can we write from the data warehouse into our operational tools so that our business teams can use that? Why would we want to do something like that? We want to increase their efficiency and effectiveness with this data. Now, as James talked about, they're probably already doing this one way or another, usually through favors from the engineers and almost always with CSVs. Like, this is happening because the data is super important for them to be able to do their jobs. The opportunity we have in the modern data stack is to do that the right way, from our single source of truth with our data warehouse being automatically fed into those tools so that everybody wins. How does this work with Grouparoo? We teach Grouparoo who our users are, the data that needs to get into those other systems. For the use case that Yukon has, we also teach it what it means to be a high-value customer. And then we sync that user and that definition into the tools that we're using, Marketo, Zendesk, and Facebook, in an automated way. Let's take a look at how that works. Let's start by showing our end goal, getting all of our users into Marketo and the ones that are high value tagged as such that we can send them a special promotional email. So in Grouparoo, that means creating a destination. So we'll call this Marketo, and we'll say, let's sync over all of our users just as they are in the data warehouse. Who are we going to send over? Let's send over everyone that we know about with an email address. Teach Marketo what its email address is, their first name, their last name, and then we can set anything else in Marketo, but we don't need to send that much more data to accomplish our use case. So step by step. Critically, we'll tag them as high value so that over in Marketo, we can treat those high value users more special. We save it, and then Grouparoo starts to do its thing. We're going to verify all of the data, make sure it's right and fresh from the data warehouse, and then start syncing to Marketo. We use Marketo's batch endpoint, so it should be pretty fast. And now we can see who we synced over. These are all of the different users that we synced over to Marketo. We can use this to gain confidence in what we've sent, as well as know exactly what Marketo knows about all of our users. Of course, we could also look in Marketo, and we'd see all of the users there are sent over, and this list here exists, the high value users. So for example, Alice is in the high value user group, and now she's in Marketo, and we can use that to talk just to those people when we want to send them special promotions. Now, that's the end goal. Who are our users? What do we know about them? What's the special segments that they live in? And then teaching Marketo about them. Let's see how we got to that spot. These, of course, come from our Snowflake database. So the thing we have to do there in Grouparoo is to create a source that comes from Snowflake. In this case, we're going to import the whole table of users and know everything about them. So we choose the users table here. We see that these are the right people that we want to import. And we teach it what our primary key is of these users. So in this case, it's the ID of the users. That's a property that we're going to call user ID. We're going to know that to know who is the unique people in the system. We then show it how often we want to update those users and keep Grouparoo and therefore Marketo up to date. So we're going to say, let's do this every 15 minutes, check for no new users, and we're going to pick this updated at column so that we can do it incrementally. Grouparoo will remember the last highest timestamp that we loaded users from, and because our table has it, we can use that to be super efficient with how we detect changes in this table. Next step, let's determine what data we want to load in from that users table. As we saw with Marketo, what we're going to need is the first name and last name and email, but we can click as many of these as we want to load all of that data in case we needed it from Marketo or some other destination, or to use with our segmentations. When we do that, we have all of these properties, and the data will start to load in, and we'll know everything that we need to know about these users. We can look at them, see how if the data looks right. For example, this user here, here's what we know. And we are loading all of that correctly. Now, maybe that's not everything. Maybe we didn't use dbt to wrap everything up and transform it into a single table, in which case we need to pull in data from other places. For example, we can pull in purchases here if we need to, connecting to the purchase table and pulling in the lifetime value. To do that, we need to say who the user, how the purchase table maps to the users we know about, and add a lifetime value property into Grouparoo. In this case, it's going to be a number that comes from the price, which we sum up, and we're going to say only sum up the purchases that are successful. So for example, maybe they weren't returned or something like that. When we do that, this user will get 62. All of the other users will get imported, and we'll see that all of our users now have a lifetime value on their profiles. This user is not high value because he's 90. The marketing has defined high value as $100 or more spent. And so now it's time to go in to do that, define what that group looks like. We do that with groups. One group that's already here is everyone with an email. Groups can be complex rules or simple rules. The ones we're doing today are pretty simple rules. In this case, it's everyone with an email address. We can add that high value one by going in and naming it high value and saying that it's everyone with a lifetime value that is greater or equal to 100. We'll very quickly know who all of the users are that meet that criteria. We can browse them and see that there's these 100+ people and what they look like, and that they're in these certain cohorts in these groups. With those groups defined, we're able to send them to Marketo and do everything that you saw before. If somebody newly makes a purchase, we'll detect that they need updating. Now maybe they're they're over 100 in lifetime value, and they'll get added to the list in Marketo. The power starts to come here when we add in other destinations. And so we did all this for Marketo. We can now reuse our data warehouse data and these same definitions of our users and our cohorts to, for example, do our second goal, which is to update Zendesk. So those same high value users, we're now going to sync them over to Zendesk. We'll do the same thing. We'll sync everyone that we know about that has an email address so that when they email in, we'll know all about them. We'll teach Zendesk about their user ID and their name and their email. We're pulling in all the custom fields from Zendesk so we can set any of these if we wanted to. And critically, we'll again choose the high value group here so that in Zendesk, they'll get tagged as high value. Save that. And same idea, Grouparoo is now syncing over to Zendesk, which will get all of those users over there in and critically tagged as high value. Here's all of our high value users. What it means in Zendesk's specific case, when a user is tagged as high value, any tickets they create will be tagged as high value, which allows us to create a rule to route that to a queue that'll then be worked faster. This accomplishes, the second goal we had, which is giving them a better customer support experience. Finally, we had one other goal, which is to teach Facebook about these high value users. So same story over and over again, reverse ETL at work, leveraging that data that we have to teach Facebook with their email address, in this case, about our users, creating an audience over in that system so that we can remind them that we exist and that they love us and they should buy more. We can send over any users we want. Every group that we pick here will become an audience in Facebook. See, here we go, audiences. And that allows us to either talk to them directly via ads and other, or to create a lookalike audience such that we can find more high value users. And that's how it works. You let the system know what data is important to you and what it means to the business, and you map that into the tools that your teams are using. They'll automatically see the new data as it comes in the tools that they use every day. It's never been easier to be a data hero to these teams that need this data so desperately, and now we've made it so easy. I thought I'd take some time to talk about the trends we've seen throughout the conference, how they apply to Grouparoo. The first is about owning your data. The second is about data teams delivering data products, thinking about it in that way. And the last is about doing this through software engineering practices through DataOps. I realized when I got to this point in my presentation that I only really used this one template, 1, 2, 3. I heard somewhere at some point that was the way you're supposed to do slides, and that seemed pretty good. I showed this to some people in the data space, and they said, no, this is too boring. What you need are memes. People in the data space love memes. And I said, I don't know anything about memes. And they said, it's not hard. You just take what you want to talk about and Google it. And I said, okay, so I guess I'm gonna do that. So you want to own your own data. Am I doing this right? I don't know. So you want to own your own data. This is about controlling your world for agility, compliance, better decision-making. We're putting all of our data inside of this warehouse that we have control over instead of some external vendor. That allows us to not have vendor lock-in and to query and debug and make use of it in ways that we haven't thought about yet, but will. We can iterate more quickly because of that. It's all in that one place. There's no new ETL to do. In this modern data stack, we can plug in all of these tools that operate out of that data warehouse and put it to use. And we have a single source of truth that we can share between all of the consumers of our data. The BI tools are seeing the same data definitions, literally the same tables and columns, as our reverse ETL tool, which is then interfacing with all of our external vendors. And so that's a unified decision-making, customer experience, everything is all brought together because of that architecture. In Grouparoo, this also means sharing the same definition of what it means to the business between all of those vendors. And so we have the columns that are shared in the same way. We can add in these definitions in our segmentation. They be shared amongst all of those different vendors. And so the customer experience is seamless and we don't have any errant, weird bugs happening with those experiences. Taylor talked about thinking about what we're doing as delivering data products. There's this opportunity as data is more and more important and these data teams are evolving, is to set our own data vision for the company and how it impacts the whole business and to be a competitive advantage. Specifically, we're seeing teams pushing forward from just providing CSVs to creating business intelligence and directly impacting the customers. One way that people are impacting customers is the insights into our business being fed back into the products. That's an example of an internal integration. Another is reverse ETL use case where we're syncing that data into, say, marketing tools. This is now a core part of the customer experience. And that's more impact than data teams have had in the past. And is a very exciting development in this space for sure. In order to do that effectively, we need to embrace collaboration across the whole organizations. How can marketing teams and data teams work together better? And I think it's exciting they can be about the shared definitions of what this data means. We can all really understand what it means by looking at it together. Something we're seeing in Grouparoo is the data team providing that foundational knowledge, building on top of everything we've shown in the data warehouse. Here are the properties of your users that you really care about. Their email and first name and lifetime value and likelihood to churn and all these kinds of things. By having this tool that allows us to browse these profiles, understand if this looks right, we can sit with our marketing counterparts and see if it looks right. And then we can actually hand it off and say, all right, it's now your job to define what these cohorts look like. It's your job to do whatever you need to do to be successful, mapping this into your tool like Marketo. This gives them the autonomy they need to be successful. If they need new data, we've already shown a stack that allows us to be agile to get that new data to them. And it's all so much better than the CSVs that are already happening in our organization that are out of date the minute we export them. This allows them to define what they need and have it automatically kept up to date in those systems in a much better way. But because of all this, we're directly impacting customers, which is great. we need to think more about the software engineering practices put into play in the data world. This is another trend. It's about using the learnings we've had from agile software development over the last 20 years in the data space. And so we're seeing more iterative development. You finish that DBT model, or even one column of that DBT model, and you can push that up to get feedback and deliver value immediately. You don't have to wait until the whole dashboard is done. We see that kind of stuff getting checked in as code into source control so that we can go through the whole life cycle, pull requests, tests, continuous integration, staging environments, and on until it's deployed into production. The benefit here is that we get more eyes on the problem, we create organizational learning, and we keep it under control because now we're directly affecting those customers. We don't need to be sending out 10 million emails to every user of HBO. We can use these practices that are tried and true to be successful. It's a much better demo to show the UI, but everything that I showed at Grouparoo can also be saved as JSON files to go through this software engineering Git-based workflow. So you can check your definition of your lifetime value into source control, see that as a PR, have tests that verify that it works as expected against sample or real data, check that in, have it automatically run in continuous integration, see things working in a staging environment, and then deploy it. And that workflow is going to be more and more common in the data world. And it's just so much better for moving quickly and delivering value at the level that the data teams are now than, say, Python notebooks or crazy SQL file on a data analyst's desktop. These are the trends that we're seeing. Oh, I feel so much better now that I'm back to my tried and true template here. It's really great. So these are the trends we're seeing. It's about owning your own data, data teams delivering data products, software engineering practices. You've seen that throughout the conference, and that's what I have. Oh, okay, one more meme. Sorry, one more meme. Grouparoo has a free trial. If you want to check it out, go to grouparoo.com and check it out. Now I'm done. Thank you. That was operationalizing your data through reverse ETL. Head on over to Discord if you want to chat more about it. We'll be there and we'll be ready to answer any questions. Since I'm the last talk through this whole data pipeline journey, I want to thank all the vendors that have presented. It's really great people doing really great work that enable organizations to produce data products that they've never been able to do before. And it's so great that we've been all together and we can help Yukon move forward. Tomorrow, we have Emily leading a roundtable, talking more about open source and this world. That'll be the finale of our conference. I hope to see you there. It's going to be great. Thanks.